Guys, let me introduce you to Tom Cottar. Tom is someone that was put on my radar by someone who said, Steve, you're going to love this guy because he's like you. He's high energy, has his fingers in a lot of pies, and he's out there making a difference. He runs a nonprofit organization called Backpack Friends, which we talk about in this interview. He is the author of Unleashing Your Creativity, Lessons from a Reluctant Creative. He has been in the ministry. He is a musician. And he's just an awesome dude. His energy and enthusiasm for making a difference in this world definitely qualifies him as a strong and amazing rippler. And I'm so grateful he agreed to be on the Ripple Effect podcast. And I can't wait for you to meet him. So let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Ripple Effect podcast. I'm your host, Steve Harper, and I'm super excited to introduce you to someone that is, I think, the quintessential rippler. Tom Cottar is joining us today. Tom, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited that you agreed to do the podcast.
Yeah, no, man. Thank you. Thanks for connecting and having me. I'm excited to just have a conversation. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate it. You and I had a call a few weeks back, and we really hit it off. And what you're doing, I think, is really going to inspire a lot of people. But I'm a big believer in starting sort of separate from the, sort of the what you're doing today, but how you kind of became who you are, right? I'm a big believer in the origin story because
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by sort of that journey and sort of what led you to do what you're doing today. So could you give us some
Mm.
idea of who Tom is and how Tom became Tom?
Sure. No, I think that's really interesting, man. So I grew up, I'm a Texas boy. Like I've grown up in Texas most of my life. You could probably tell by the way I talk.
Yep.
Um, there's no denying that. My dad, my father, was actually in a band when he was in the service. He toured around, just some kind of trivia. He toured around before I was born and when I was super young, with some really great. I mean, he just had some great opportunities. Like he played with B.B. King and Ray Charles and
Wow.
Aretha, and he released a little song called RESPECT that Aretha cut, and of course she
I
really
think I've
blew up.
heard that song.
Yeah. I may have heard
Just a
it once.
little one. Yeah.
So
Wow.
I say that to say music is in my background. Like it runs in our family. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I can't show you. I've got a studio out here. Um,
Is that
but
an amp right behind you on your right
it
shoulder?
is. It is. There's a wall of guitars over here I can pan around
Oh
and
my
fit
gosh.
to.
Yeah.
So anyway, I share that because that'll become important later on in the conversation. But
Yep.
so I was super sick as a kid. I was super ill. I
Oh.
was a skinny little unhealthy. I spent a lot of time in bed. I missed a lot of school.
Oh.
So growing up, I wanted to be two things because of my dad. I wanted to be a rock star, and then I wanted to be a doctor. Right, a lot of kids you
Yeah.
want to grow up to be a doctor. Um, my dad actually came off the road and got a job as a pharmaceutical rep so that
Okay.
he could get medication for me as a child. Okay, so the idea we have this thing in our nonprofit, this mantra that leadership isn't about being in charge; it's about serving those in your charge,
Yeah.
right?
Love
Um,
that.
so growing up, that was just kind of ingrained in us, and I wasn't motivated enough to be a doctor, but I always loved music. I spent a lot of years doing church work, doing student ministry and family stuff, and music at churches and camps and stuff like that. And so that just kind of has always. I'm a big fan of sharing your strengths, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
as you grow and as you learn and as you acquire these tools and these skill sets. Um, I've always had a love for people, which is funny because the word philanthropy
Yeah.
means lover of mankind, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
doesn't mean you're rich. It just means you love people,
Yep.
and so that kind of has led me into Austin, Texas, with the music scene and doing those kinds of things. And then about I don't know a handful of years ago, this incident happened, and which kind of launched into what I'm doing now.
Okay. So, well, before we dive into that, so where did you grow up? What part of Texas?
So I grew up Southeast Texas, outside of Houston,
Okay.
Baytown area, which I was born in Corsicana. We kind of lived around. Moved to Baytown in 1976. So I'm 55. Moved to
Okay.
Baytown in 76. Excuse me. When I was in third grade, graduated from high school there in Baytown. In 85, went to a junior college, then went off and finished at a East Texas Baptist up in Northeast Texas in Marshall,
Yeah.
Longview area,
Yeah.
where I met my wife. Which is a whole funny story of, she was the typical story. She was seeing somebody, I was seeing somebody. We met and went, no, I think this is the one. And we both dumped the other, romance. And we will celebrate our 30th anniversary this August. So
Wow. Congratulations.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean,
So
the other aspect there, though, is you do not look 55. So whatever you're doing, when we're done recording, I'm going to
well,
need to figure out those tips. But my wife and I celebrate our 29th anniversary this coming October. So we're one behind you. But well
congratulations. Yeah,
done. I mean, that's
yeah.
that's an accomplishment for sure.
That's yeah, yeah. 30 years and 3 kids later, and
Yeah.
you know, 40 guitars. I don't know what it is. It's
That
I tell
actually sounds like a perfect title for a book. Honestly, I think when you write that book, you
that's
should.
that's not a bad, or at least a song, right?
30 years
Right.
later, 3 kids and 40 guitars.
And 40 guitars.
Or
That's right.
exactly, yeah, it's a
Two
song title
dogs.
right there.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
growing up and sort of, kind of evolving music was a big part of your life, and you obviously carried that into the ministry approach that you were taking, early on, but give the audience a little bit of a glimpse as to sort of what that led you to, and ultimately, were you doing the nonprofit, before you moved to Austin, or was this something that was sparked after you moved here?
oh, sure, sure. Yeah. Well, and it's funny growing up, right? We were always we were middle class, working class family,
Yeah.
right? My dad traveled a lot because of his job. Mom sold real estate, which I spent a lot of afternoons after school in the back of a station wagon doing homework, while she's showing houses.
Yep.
Um, Interesting thing as an adult, when you look back at that, hindsight's 2020, right?
Sure.
So looking back now, man, I remember days of being at home in the kitchen, dad off on the road working.
Yeah.
Um, my brother and I sitting down at the dinner table to eat, and mom not really eating. She was kind of, what we call piddling in the South, just
Mhm.
kind of messing around and cleaning and putting things away. I didn't realize it as a child, but as an adult looking back, it was because she was waiting to see if there was enough food left over for her to eat. So my
Wow.
brother and I would eat, and if there's anything left, then she would eat. So we were that family, but
Yeah.
everybody around us was in the same boat. So I had moved, fast forward to, 15, 20 years ago, I had moved to the Dallas Fort Worth area. I was working for a state convention, where I was programming camps and retreats and doing leadership training and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Got a call from a church here in Pflugerville. So we ended up moving to Pflugerville because it's close to Austin, and I
Sure.
love the
Yep.
creativity and the music and the arts, and going about life. And
Yeah.
not in 2014, the girl named Mari, sweet girl, straight A student, passed out one Monday morning, because she didn't have food to eat. She was a couch surfer,
Oh,
so she was what the term is, unaccompanied youth. So she was sleeping at
yeah.
her aunt's and a friend's house, and she relied on school meals, for 90% of her nutrition. So when she was away from school, she didn't have anything to eat.
Oh,
So because of my involvement in the community, through churches and through some student activities and just different music, some different things, I got pulled into a meeting with the superintendent and a handful of other people, different community leaders, and we beta tested this program, And we called it, of course, we live in Pflugerville, which is spelled Pflugerville. Okay, it's a German word for farmer.
Yeah.
So we launched this thing called Backpack Friends with a PF, Friends, because that's what we do in Pflugerville. Everything is a PF.
Everything's a
Right?
P. Yeah.
It's that branding.
Yeah.
So, so we launched this thing, and my wife Heather and I started feeding 12 kids at a local elementary school down the street. Just 12 kids who were in the same boat. We thought, how hard could this be? And it's just 12 kids, and we'll figure out a way to feed them every weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that began to grow unexpectedly, just as volunteers. And in about 3 or 4 years, we were feeding about 90 kids across 4 campuses every weekend. And we'd kind of got a system down where we all have jobs and we have families, and it had to be sustainable. So it was a really interesting thing that happened. I got a call. In fact, it's interesting that we're doing this podcast today, because a week from today is the anniversary of this lady who called me. She actually texted me and said,
Wow.
"Hey, we're going out of town. Saw what you guys are doing on Facebook, feeding kids, and I follow you and that kind of thing. My husband and I want to give you a gift just to say thank you, not for the program, but just to say thank you to you and Heather for what you guys are doing. Can you meet me at this shopping center not far from the house?" And man, I have to tell you, I don't make it a habit of meeting strange women at a shopping center. But I literally call my wife and say, "Hey, I'm going to meet this woman. If I end up missing, like start looking here in this parking lot." But she gets out of her minivan, and as she's getting out of the minivan, she's handing me this envelope. But as she's getting out, her little girl reaches from the back seat to the front seat, grabs some change out of the cup holder, and sticks it in this envelope. And when she hands it to me, I open it up, and there are 8 $100 bills and then 4 quarters that the little girl stuck in. It was super sweet, super sweet. And she tells me, this is for you guys. Y'all go out and do something special. You go celebrate. I'm thinking, I need another guitar. Like I need another hole in the head, right? So I hug her neck, told her thank you. Go home, tell my wife, Heather's planning. Let's do a weekend getaway. Let's go somewhere. I go down. That was on a Friday. On Saturday, I go to the mailbox, and there's a note. It's actually in my office over the warehouse. There's a thank you note from a lady who was a friend of my mom before she passed away. Who's a retired school teacher in Pasadena, Texas. Same kind of thing, where she says, "Look, we're watching on social media, and we want to give you $30. Put it to the cause." So I have $831 that we didn't expect to have. So we're thinking, okay, how do we do this? How do we do what we're doing, feeding these kids? How do we do it to scale? I don't want to get in trouble with the IRS. Like I want to cover all those bases. Never done this before. I'm a guitar player. So I'll reach out to a buddy of mine who's a CPA and tell him what we're doing.
Yeah.
And what he says is, we can take care of you. We'll set you up, do all of your articles of incorporation, your EIN, right? All of that stuff. And our fee, in-house turnkey fee for that is $830. I'm like, what? Like, say that again?
Yeah.
Like, say that in my good ear, right?
Yeah.
So like, okay, I guess that's what we're doing. So we pull the trigger. We start doing all those things to set up the corporation. 2 weeks later, this is embarrassing, but 2 weeks later, I wake up in the middle of the night in a panic because I had registered with the IRS as Backpack Friends Incorporated, but I didn't check the state of Texas comptroller website to see if that name was available for use to do business in Texas.
Yeah.
Okay, rookie mistake. I've never done this before.
Yeah.
Hop on the computer, do a search. It's free to do the search. You have to pay for that, right? It's not a big deal. It's like $40 fee, I think, with the state of Texas. Put in my credit card, go back to sleep. The next morning, I get up and I check my email. And because we're a nonprofit, the state of Texas charges us $1, which took the 4 quarters that were left over from that envelope. Steve, I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Talk about
I've got,
signs, right? I mean,
yeah, I've got goosebumps. I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing, man. We're going all in.
yeah,
So we incorporated in 2018, July of 2018. I had a couple of years getting our sea legs, before the pandemic hit in
sure. Yeah.
2020. In 2020, we doubled. And then in 2021, we doubled again. And from those original 12 kids, we're feeding about 4,000 a month right now. So we've actually provided about 86,000 backpacks of
Wow.
food for kids in Central Texas, which is, we were figuring out the other night, it's about 2.2 million pounds of food that's gone out. It's been amazing. Like, I never saw myself doing this, but it's been incredibly fulfilling to do.
Well, I mean, well done. I mean, you are certainly an inspiration to those of us that are always trying to look for ways to, make contribution. And we talk about the ripple effect. I mean, you are a
Mhm.
true blue rippler for sure, without question. You're creating such impacts in the lives of these kids and these families, right? At the end of the day, it's what I've actually found after meeting with you, doing a little bit of research, the challenge for a lot of those families, they don't often know how to ask for help, don't know where to go, or their resources are often fairly limited. And it's unfortunate because you actually see generational problems, because you have,
Yeah.
these kids learn from their parents that there's shame in this, and it's not their fault, and it's certainly, no one, wants to make anybody feel bad, but at the end of the day, it becomes one of those situations where you can start to see second and third generations of kids that have
Mhm.
really struggled and had issues all their lives, and yet here you and your wife Heather are coming out and showing the goodness in people, and saying, look, here's a problem that needs fixing, and we're not going to wait to necessarily wait on the traditional government resources to assist or guide here. Let's just go make it happen. And so that's the ultimate action. So I think you're making an impact, because you're not only showing what can be done if you have the ingenuity and the time to do it, and you're willing to just see a problem, and rather than just talk about it, but actually do something about it. But at the same time, I think you're also changing lives in terms of how people see what the kindness of others can really mean to their lives. And so my hat's off
Well,
to you. That's phenomenal.
I appreciate that, man. It's been really interesting. Of course, we've learned a lot through this
Yeah, of
process, right?
course.
You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Uh, so when we started this, one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to keep, because there is so much shame. Like, you hit the nail on the head. There's
Yeah.
so much. We want to be sure that we're serving these families with dignity and respect. We've got our system in place that we don't hold any data on families and kids and all that, because of HIPAA and
Sure.
privacy and those kinds of things. Um, so we work directly with the school system, directly with counselors and teachers and nurses who can identify those students who are most at risk. And we deliver, if you're a counselor at one of the schools, and you call me and you're like, Tom, man, I've got 100 kids at my school that need to be on the program. I'm like, great, here's the forms, you enroll them, you hold the personal data, you give me a number, and we'll just show up to support that number of students.
Wow.
And those students will come to your office on a Friday afternoon, put that food in their backpack, and slip out as anonymous as possible.
It's
Um,
amazing.
so it's been it, it's just been such an incredible journey. Um, One of the joys that I have in this is, I'm like you, I'm a people person, right? It's everything is about people.
Yep.
And there were this has given me a platform to connect people across other tribes, right?
Hmm.
There were people that would support this work if it were in a church. There were people that would support this work if wouldn't support it if it were in a church. And so
Yeah.
to step out and to do a 501c3, some of our biggest supporters are churches and bars. We
Hmm.
have distillers, and we have people who are cooks and chefs and restaurant owners, and barbecue, like world-class barbecue guys, mom and pops, just families who just give $20 a month, or Whataburger, who is one of our big corporate sponsors, and those kinds of things. So to be able to connect, it's
Yeah.
the ripple effect.
Yeah.
It's 100% the ripple effect of, if I can make an impact, make an impression, a dent into an area, into somebody's life. Well, how's that going to affect the next person they meet? How's that
Sure.
going to affect their family? How are they going to serve their neighbor? And when all those ripple effects begin to take place, that's how we win. That's how we change a community.
Yep.
So I'm a huge believer in that.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's the perfect example of it. And, like like you said, I mean, when it ripples out, you don't really realize how many people you're touching, but, just by extension, these organizations and these individuals that support the work that you're doing, they're able to contribute this effort. Maybe it's a monetary, investment in what you're doing, but at the end of the day, they also are creating their own ripple effect, because you've got the game plan and the approach, plus the network built to be able to deliver what you're doing. They may not necessarily think about that. So one of the things I would encourage our audience to really think about is, this is already in action. This is a process and an approach that you can feel good about, that monthly donation and what it's doing and where it's being, where that contribution is going, because it directly goes right to the kids. And so I would encourage you to, tell everybody the website so that they know how to find information about you. And I want everybody, and we'll also put it in the show notes, but I want everybody to be aware of it, because this is such an important movement. It's one of the big factors. I mean, if you do any research, one of the big challenges that public education has right now is kids that are not, adequately supported in their dietary needs, and how that affects their ability to learn, pay attention. It affects their, absentee absentee issues that, often cause a different ripple effect for the school districts, because if they're not there, they're not getting paid through the federal government. So there's all these challenges. So it's not something we can all continue to ignore, whether we have school age kids or not. It's important that we are doing our part to contribute out here to the community, whatever community we're in. So how do people learn more about the program?
Yeah, that's so true, man. Backpackfriends.com, just without the PF, just like normal people spell it. That was a conscious decision. So backpackfriends.com is the easiest way. Backpack Friends Official across TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all, LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
One of the things that we want to be real transparent about, when you go to the website, you'll see two ways to support. One is what's called the Impactus Program, which is we have men and women and businesses who underwrite our operations costs. We don't pay rent. We're not paying the landlord for our warehouse. We don't pay. It's a huge blessing. We don't pay utilities or air conditioning. The Girl Scouts use their cookie money to provide shelves for our warehouse. You don't have to give money to support what we're doing, right? We talk about sharing your strengths. So we have this Impactus program that people give, so that we do fundraising, or you come and you say, hey, I want to give you $20 a month. That $20 goes absolutely 100% to food, because we have the other overhead costs covered. That was something that was real important to us, especially in the nonprofit space. There can be some deception, there can be some corruption. So we wanted to just be real transparent about that.
Absolutely.
But all of that is at backpackfriends.com.
Okay. Well, and so, speaking about that though, what are some of, I've got to imagine, COVID was a bit of a challenging time for you guys going through that, because the connections to the schools, especially when schools were sort of shut down or were at half staff, that had to have been a challenge. But it sounded like when you and I talked that you've come through that. You're in the process of trying to serve an even larger network of kids. What are some of the needs that your organization has now, that maybe if there's a corporation or, giving entrepreneur that's out there that, it's like, hey, maybe that's something that I can contribute. I'm a big believer in, what ripples are you willing to give? Because you're obviously giving it. So, your answer is already clear as, it is clear to everybody that'll watch this or hear this, but also what ripples could you take? What ripples would you like to have to be made on behalf of the organization?
Sure. Oh yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, it's been, COVID has challenged everybody. Like it's
Yeah.
challenged all of us. And everybody in the audience knows this, the supply chain issues with food and fires at processing plants and boats out in the harbor waiting to come in, like all of those things, food prices skyrocketing, all that kind of thing has been a huge challenge to overcome. We've tweaked our menu so that we've cut about 40% of sugar out of the things that we've been given, have raised the amount of protein that we're giving kids to about 72, 74 grams of protein, depending on the week. So we're trying to give them good nutrition.
Yeah.
One of the things that we lost, we try to be real creative. So one of the things that we lost during COVID is I had a connection, a friend who was a cattle rancher. And one of the things he did was he sourced really good brisket and just created this beef stick. Okay,
Huh?
that was no sugar, and we sold it in some local convenience stores and local markets, kind of like Tom's Shoes,
Sure,
where you
sure.
buy one and you give one, which was great. So every time somebody went to the local supermarket and bought one, that provided one for a child that would feed,
Yeah.
which was great.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that kind of tanked during
Oh,
COVID.
yeah.
So there's some things like that. Anyone who may have some creative ideas on how to source some of those things, somebody may be listening, watching, and thinking, well, I know somebody at a packing plant, or I
Yep.
know, all those kinds of things. And we do a lot of real creative fundraisers. We have a kind of a monthly giving cycle, like everybody else does, but we do some real creative things. We've done some real creative things with Microsoft, where we've hosted online gaming nights,
Yeah.
and made it a competition. And so it's interesting because a lot of companies, Microsoft and Dell and some of those places, will will donate to us per hour for their employees to do volunteer work or those kinds of things. And so we were able to have this huge gaming night on Twitch one night, and those donations were made to Backpack Friends while we had a tournament, a virtual tournament.
Yeah.
So any of those kinds of creative things, there's nothing, I don't think, too far out of the box that we wouldn't try to feed kids with.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Well, so, for our audience, they're you're looking for creative ideas, other alternative means of contribution if you can, and obviously those connections, any connections that anybody has out there that could potentially help. Backpack Friends, secure, the right types of connections, the right kinds of sources, for any of the food suppliers, or maybe trying to find some tie-in to a rancher that might be willing to help us, get that the beef stick idea back and going would be ideal, right? So
yeah, yeah,
that the whole concept of the ripple is, you got to put it out there what you need, and you're clearly a giver, and your organization, yours and Heather's efforts to build this organization up is really inspirational. And I really call on our Ripple community to step up and see what we can do to ripple back and say thank you, because I mean it is so needed and so necessary, and it's a huge impact for sure. So
yeah.
hopefully,
Well, thank
like
you.
you said, somebody will be listening or
Yeah,
watching that'll be able to help us here.
yeah, yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Like I said, this has been life. Sometimes life happens for you and
Yeah.
not to you,
Yeah.
right? And so, looking back, seeing where we started and seeing what we're doing now, there have been, of course, a lot of challenges, a lot of obstacles, and a huge learning curve. Um, but there's no doubt this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yep.
There's
It's
no
your
doubt.
calling for
So
sure. You can
yeah,
see it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to go all in. Yeah.
So let me ask you. So I'm, really big into Ripple questions. So I'm going to ask you a few, but since you just mentioned it, what's one of the biggest lessons that you've learned from one of the challenges that you've experienced in getting this organization off and running?
Oh wow. Biggest A couple of the biggest things I think I've learned. Um, uh, One is, okay. So here's something really interesting. Um, when I was when I was gigging and playing music and doing
Mhm.
that a lot, right? I realized that I didn't need a big record contract. I didn't need to go to Nashville. I didn't need to do all those kinds of things to make it, to do what I wanted to do. What I needed was 1,000 people who would spend $100 a year on my music, right? Whether it's a house show or a concert or a t-shirt
Yep.
or a new CD, whatever. And that would afford me $100,000 a year to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I transferred to Backpack Friends is we can launch a campaign of 1,000 people who will give us $10 a month. That's $120,000 that will go straight to food.
Yeah.
That's almost half of our annual budget right now.
Mm-hmm.
So taking those things, learning, first of all, trying to know what you don't know is always the biggest challenge. Swallowing your ego, swallowing your pride, and learning from other people who are farther down the road. There's a saying that theory and practice are the same in theory, right? So you get a lot of advice from people of, hey, you should do this, you should do this, and they mean well, right? Their hearts are right. And, they really are being genuine. But the biggest lesson I've learned is to just go get dirty, get your hands dirty, and talk to other people who have done it, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
So that's been a huge, but of course that you have to that takes some humility to do that.
Yeah.
Just suck it up and go, okay, you be my Yoda, I'll be your Luke. You tell me what to do.
Yeah.
So surrounding yourself with those people.
That's a huge factor, right? For a lot of people that, you let your ego get in the way and you don't ask for the help or don't ask for the guidance, or people are really, challenged to want to ask for anybody's, experience or time, because it's not comfortable for a lot of people. And the reality is, so many of us, and, I've got to believe that, there are far more of us out there like you and me that are willing to admit we don't know everything, and we're willing, to be, the Lukes, like you said, and find our Yodas, which I love that reference, by the way. I'm a total Star Wars nerd. So,
yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like when I've done that, when I remember when I first moved to Austin, it was brand new entrepreneur. I was 22 years old, didn't know anything, felt completely out of my element, but I ended up with a group of entrepreneurs, many of which are still my great friends, but they were all running their own businesses. And I came there ready to learn, but I came ready and prepared to ask questions and ask for guidance and input. And not a lot of people are willing to do that, but it's amazing what will come when you do that, right? And when you're willing to admit you don't have all the answers, that someone out there has done it before, somebody's got some experience, you can learn from the the licks that they've taken and the beatings they've gotten. And so I think there is a lot of opportunity, and you just got to get outside your comfort zone a little bit and say, look, I'm willing to, to take and absorb whatever you're willing to teach me. I think people in general are more than willing to share it if you're willing to come with an open heart and an open mind and a true genuineness in terms of your approach.
Oh, I agree 100%. It's one of the things that I think as entrepreneurs, we're kind of a strange breed anyway, right?
Yeah.
We're a little bit feral. We're a little bit outside the fence, and we're not good at being house pets.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a good analogy.
Right?
I love
that. Was it Thomas Edison, I think, that said a vision without execution is hallucination? Like you've got to be, you have to be that man, that woman. You got to be that person that just goes, I'm just going to go, to not be afraid of failure.
Yeah.
Right. Because even failure is just data. It's just, you just learn something. That's all it is. And so that's, for me, that's been the game, is learning how to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right. That's been a, not just in our business, but in my life, that's made a difference in the last few years in this journey. That's been a huge thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, switching gears, I'm going to ask you a couple of ripple questions that I, just give the audience a little bit more insight as to who you are. But favorite guitar? What's your favorite guitar?
Oh man, that's like which child is your favorite?
Yeah.
So I have.
Don't tell us which one of your children is your favorite, because this will be on video. So
right.
It could come back to haunt you. I don't know.
Right. Gosh. So my current favorite guitar is I kind of nerd out a little bit, as you
Uh-huh.
can imagine, is a vintage 1992 um, Mexican Nashville Telecaster
Ooh.
Fender that I picked up on Craigslist for $100 that a 20-something-year-old kid was selling, that like his dad gave him, and then he just like, I don't want to play the guitar, I'm not any good at it. So when I went and picked this thing up, it had actual concert tickets of Tom Petty and Prince taped to the guitar case.
No
Jones,
way.
yeah, it's taped. Um, and I kept saying it's got noiseless pickups, and anyway, it's great. And so I kept saying, "Are you sure you want to get rid of this?" And he's like, "Yeah, I don't want to play." So, um, I mean, I have a $3,000 PRS that I love. I have, a couple of Taylor acoustics that I love. But this Nashville Telly, rosewood fingerboard, like all those things,
Oh,
like it's perfect. So it's kind of my favorite right now.
that's awesome. So are you more
Yeah.
of an acoustic or electric guitar?
I'm really more of an acoustic.
Okay.
I'm really more of acoustic. Most of what I do is rhythm and vocals, lead
Okay.
sing, that kind of thing. I love playing electric and lead, but it takes a lot more bandwidth for me to do
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
So that's not my natural gift.
Are you still
So
playing gigs?
I am.
Okay.
I am. In fact, we're booked we're booked all the way to next March, I think.
Oh, wow.
Doing several things. Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
would
So,
people find out about when and where you're playing?
Facebook or TikTok,
Okay.
just Tom Cottar, Cottar, or Harmless Heart
Okay.
is the group we're working under now. It was the Tom Cotter band, and then with COVID, everybody had to get jobs and do different things, and um, so anyway, yeah, Harmless Heart, Facebook or TikTok.
Okay, awesome. Well, we'll
Yeah.
definitely put a note in that for the show notes as well. What's the best piece of advice that you received growing up that you still use today?
Oh, what a great question. Um, Best piece of advice that I still use today. My mom used to say, um, gosh, my mom used to say, the world doesn't revolve around you. I was pretty, I'm the oldest. I have a younger
Yep.
brother, and being the oldest sibling, um, the one who is always trying to be responsible and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. I went through a pretty, as any 17-year-old testosterone boy did,
Yep.
right? This phase of thinking the world revolved around me. Um, so getting to the point that I realized a lot of my joy, a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment comes from serving other people,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
which is again is that ripple effect,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's been huge.
That's awesome. Well, I would tell you in talking with you, the thing that impressed me the most when we're doing the getting acquainted and doing the pre-interview, so to speak, was how little you talk about yourself, but more about the organization. You talk about your wife and all the great people that have stepped up to help you,
Mhm.
and that is awesome because I've worked with and have spoken for a lot of different nonprofits over the years, and that founder mentality sometimes works really against the organizations because they have those folks that are so like, yeah, this was my vision. This is, and you were
Sure.
absolutely not that. So clearly, well done for mom because she her advice made the impact. What do you think?
Well,
What do you think your superpower is? Obviously, a really awesome guitar player,
oh,
but
that's a great question. Um, Gosh, that's a great question, man. Uh, hmm. So it's hard to answer that since you
sure,
just told me how humble I am. Like it's hard to say I'm great at this. Um, I think my superpower is connecting, is connecting other people
yep,
together. I think people are so interesting. Everyone has such an interesting story.
yep,
Everyone has such an interesting journey, and I think we can we can learn anything from anybody. There's so many things that I learned from my kids or my neighbors or the families that we serve.
Yeah.
Right. We have this great team. It's really true. Our organization, I'm the founder, but it takes a village to raise an idiot. Right. I mean, it's just like it takes all these amazing people that are strong where I'm weak that I can learn from. And so I think connecting people in those ways is probably my superpower.
That's awesome. And, it's as the founder and recognizing, where you need the help is the ability for you to recognize the talents that other people bring to the table so that you ultimately can leverage that. So you clearly have done that. Let's say we're 15 years down the road, you've continued to do this and you happen to bump into one of the kids that you served, right? By extension, they were receiving meals because of this organization you and your wife came up with and the type of impact that you made. What would be the best thing you could hear them say to you at that point?
Wow, what a question. 15 years from now, I think the best thing would be to hear that well, two things, that they were grateful. I mean, what we did put their life on a different trajectory, right? Put them on a different path. But that, I guess, overall, that ripple effect encouraged them or lit a spark in them to change someone else's life, right? To go and to pay it forward somewhere.
I love that.
I think that would be awesome.
I think without question, you're gonna have not one, but many people come back to you in that way, and it'll be a true gift in those moments because you did and have made such a huge impact, and people remember, and especially in today's world where what you're doing and the visibility that you're gonna, and you continue to get for backpack friends, there's a legacy that I think you're creating that people will go, that helped me at a time that I really needed it. My situation was the way it was, but it was made better because, of the kindness of this organization. So I think you got to get prepared because I think you're probably not even going to have to wait 15 years. I think those conversations are just going to start flowing to you. Let me ask you one last question, which is, in your mind, I'm a big believer in the concept of the ripple effect, and you just touched on it and gave a really good sort of example of it. But to you, what does the ripple effect actually mean?
Oh, wow. So, man, to me, the ripple effect, I intrinsically believe that we are all connected.
Yeah.
Right. That I can't live my life in isolation. I mean, let's be honest. COVID taught us that.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
When you want to punish somebody, what do? You send them to their room. You put them in isolation. You exile them.
Yeah.
Right. That's the harshest form of punishment. So I have to live my life knowing that my actions, my beliefs, my everything touches you.
Yeah.
Good, bad, and different, right? So just the idea that this ripple effect, that's one of the things I really am intentional about with our organization is it's very grassroots because the ripple effect is the reality.
Yeah.
That if I'm caring for my neighbor and she's caring for the other neighbor and then he's caring for the neighbor across the street, then we have, I use the word tribe a lot. Then we have a tribe. Then we have a community that we rely on each other. We lean on each other. We make sure everyone's okay. And I mean, as Americans, especially in the South, we are very independent, right?
Yeah.
We're self-reliant, bootstraps, all that kind of thing. And so trying to reteach the importance of that ripple effect, I think is huge in our world right now. I think that's super important right now.
Well, I agree 100%. To use your mom's advice, I think it's not all about you. The world doesn't revolve around you as an individual, but it does revolve around the actions that we take in order to make the difference. And I think at the end of the day, you are without question a shining example of that and will inspire so many other people. Hopefully we can we can even magnify that reach through this podcast and promotion of it, just to get more eyes and visibility on the great work that you guys are doing. I'm so honored to know you. I look forward to developing this friendship, supporting you any way that I can, because I think the work that you're doing is not only just needed, it's the example the world really needs right now. And so, congratulations
Thank
to you
you.
and your team, because you guys are creating some really super positive ripples out there. One last time before we go, just tell everybody how they can find you, and they want to show up to a show to see you out there on a gig, and then also how they can learn more information about the organization, get involved, contribute.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's an honor to be here to connect with you guys. This is amazing. This is a great way to start my day. Um, Music wise, you can go to Facebook. You can go to tomcottar.com if you want to. Best place to go is Facebook, Instagram. Search Tom Cottar or Harmless Heart. That's the easiest, and that's got all our performance dates and where we are around Texas, around Central Texas. For the organization for Backpack Friends, is real simple. Backpackfriends.com. That's got contact and video and links and all you need to know.
I love it. Awesome. Well, from our audience and our ripplers out there, I mean, let's all unite. Let's get behind this and see what we can do to create some additional ripples for Tom and his team, because the work that they're doing is only going to continue to grow and expand with the support of our folks, like, that are also wanting to create those ripples out there. So let's all band together and see what we can do to help. And so, Tom, this has been amazing. I'm so honored that you agreed to come on board and do this. We'll have to do a follow-up episode at some point. I mean, and I'm going to talk to you offline about guitars at some point. I've got several. I'm not good, but I love guitar. So I may have to hang out with you and maybe get some tips and pointers on how to become better. But
yeah,
I'm so grateful to know you.
Yeah, no, same here, man. I'm super grateful that we connected, and we'll keep it going.
Yeah.
I would love to hang out, and we'll ripple on, right?
Awesome. I love it. Yes. And ripple on for sure. You guys will be back with another episode of the Ripple Effect podcast very soon. And until then, yes, in fact, let's ripple on.